Oh yeah, right there. That's what performance looks like. I think. I mean, it's kind of looks like Play-Doh, but surely that's performance. Now, for all of you who have been following along, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, good Lord, he actually did it. And for those of you just joining us now, you're probably thinking, what the hell did he just do? So to answer both those questions, yes, and I filled the carburetor full of J&B Weld in the pursuit of power. Well, really in pursuit of performance and therefore power. And the way we're going to achieve this performance power combo is by making the carburetor more functional, by making the carburetor function better. Now, this is our 600 Holley. It's our XMC prototype mule, essentially, that we're doing a collaboration in junction with Joseph Nowak. Now, he already flow tested this thing stock, and he flow tested it with our previous modifications, which I have a video on in the description, and it's that one right there, about him making that video right there. But now we're on to step 2. That was step 1, now we're step 2. And step 2 is, well, as you can see, quite radical. And this is only, the top side of step 2. We're still going to do the bottom side, which, in case you don't know, is we're going to put a 750 base plate on this 600 Holley. But today we're focusing on the top and what exactly I'm doing with it and explaining to you what I got done so far and what we're planning on doing, in the future here. So let's look at it. Now, aside from looking like I stuffed this thing full of marshmallow, in case you're wondering why there's two different colors, that's high temp J&B Weld stick, and this is water weld J&B Weld. Why did I use two? Well, because the store only had so much of each kind sitting on the shelf, and I needed like 4 sticks. This was 4 sticks worth of J&B Weld stick. And I needed, so we've all been there. But, as you can clearly see, we stuffed her full. I built up walls on each side right here. This is actually the stock choke tower, right? It actually went like this. The stock choke tower, which we J&B welded over, okay? And once this hardens, I am going to come back through and port it. I'm going to make it really nice, really smooth, really nice big radius entries, right? It's going to be pretty slick. Now, there are at least 2 things you're probably wondering about. The air bleeds and the accelerator pump discharge nozzle. Now, the air bleeds I addressed in the last video. Essentially, we are moving them from the main body and actually going to put them in the metering block. We're going to just move them way out of the way. That way I have all this room to make nice big radius entries. Okay, so that's that. The discharge nozzle, that was a little bit tougher because I couldn't just move the discharge nozzle out of the way. It needed to be there. Go figure. But before I explain that, let me finish explaining what we're going to do at the top. Now, once I get all of this nice and, smooth, what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and drill out these crossover pipes. Not a pipe, tube, not a tube, bar. It's a bar. We're going to drill out and get rid of these crossbars. Well, for obvious reasons, for extra CFM flow, and because the whole point of putting all this J&B Weld in here is to get rid of all of the dead space surrounding the booster. And what I mean by getting rid of dead space is getting rid of all of the ways airflow can get around the booster without actually having to flow like next to the booster, right? Remember, straight legs, I mean, the straight leg booster sits above the venturi down here. I mean, air can bypass the booster and get down into the venturi without actually having to aid the booster in removing fuel. We are looking to eliminate that problem. So we are setting the booster down into the carburetor, essentially by building the carburetor up, making more of a down leg style booster out of this straight leg booster. That's why we put all this J&B Weld in there. And also just to clean up, I mean, you know, all of this area in here and all of this, you know, I mean, realistically, there's no reason why this has to be here and then goes down in. This should just be a nice taper, right? Which this will be. So we can remove that crossbar without hopefully losing any booster signal because of what we did here. So, and then we might thin out the boosters a bit. I mean, there's a ring right here. We're gonna probably sand the tips of these boosters, get that nice and sharp right there. Just overall massage the booster up a bit. Okay, probably thin down the actual you know, tube. Thin that down a bit. Alright, well, I guess now it's time to address the elephant in the room, right? What's going on with this discharge nozzle? Now, as you might be able to notice, okay, the discharge nozzle, there's one in there. There's one in there, trust me. It's not exactly easy to swap out anymore, for obvious reasons. Now what I did was I put the biggest discharge nozzle that I think the carburetor would ever need to run in there. How big is it? The biggest one I had, I think it's like a 37 or something like that. Yeah, it was a 37. So I put that in there. I J&B welded all, you know, around it. We will obviously make sure the holes are nice and open so that it can spray fuel down in there. Don't worry about that. But that leaves the question, how are we going to tune the nozzle when we can't access it? I wrapped my brain around it and I think I have an answer. Now, to know what the answer is, we first have to know what the discharge nozzle does. Now, the discharge nozzle is just different sized orifices, right? The holes on the squirters on either side change. They're, you know, small holes, bigger holes, right? Now, what does that do? Well, it doesn't actually limit fuel, okay? The amount of fuel getting pumped in is fixed by your not discharge nozzle, that's that, by your accelerator pump itself. The amount of cc's your pump is, that's how many cc's of fuel gets shot in. Doesn't change, doesn't matter what size nozzle you have, the same amount of fuel always gets shot in. What does change, however, is how fast it shoots in. A bigger, you know, orifice will let more fuel flow. So it will take a shorter amount of time for all of the fuel to be dumped in. A smaller nozzle won't flow as much. So it takes longer for all the fuel to get shot in. More fuel all at once, or less fuel over a longer period of time. That's what that does. So, in knowing that fuel flow is what that changes, how fast the fuel can flow, I drilled and tapped the circuit to accept an air bleed. Now, I believe that is going to work just fine, because that is going to limit the amount of fuel that can flow through it, thus limiting how fast fuel can flow out here. Okay? It's going to do the exact same thing, only right there. Now, the only thing that I think might change is the fact that if you're limiting it back here, it might not shoot out quite as, vigorously as if it was limited right here. It might kind of shoot out more lazily. But the fact that it's deeper inside the venturi, we should have more airspeed going. And we can build a little shear plate ramp for it to kind of flow out on and then shear off of. That'll be fine. What size jet to put in here, though? Now, I don't know exactly if it's, a true 1-to-1, but I figure, let's say I want a 31 pump shot here, right? It'd be 31 thousandths, 31 thousandths. Well, 31 thousandths plus 31 thousandths is 62 thousandths. So you'd want a 62 jet. Is that exactly 1-to-1 how that would work? I don't know. Look, all right, I needed to solve this problem, and that's the best solution I came up with, all right? You tell me if that will work or not. I think it should work. All right, I'm going to assume it does. You let me know in the comments if you think it would work. Or if it would work, how you would go about finding the correct jet size to put in here, okay? Like I said, I believe it might not shoot the fuel out as, but that'll be fine. I believe that'll be fine. So, we have completely reworked the accelerator pump circuit and completely reworked the air bleed circuit and are completely reworking the top of the carburetor, completely reworking the boosters, and are going to completely rework the bottom venturi bores, honing those out to accept a bigger base plate. Now, a lot of you people might be wondering, why? Why go through all this work when you could just literally buy a bigger carburetor? For the fun of it, of course, and I want to see how much flow, not just flow though, because constricting all of this down to achieve better booster signal is probably going to lessen flow. But we might make up for that lessened flow by having a nice radius, entry. I don't know. We picked up quite a bit of CFM from our last modification. I don't even know what this is going to do. Take your guesses. But it's fun to experiment to see exactly what affects flow more, right? I think this is going to do pretty good. But we will see. I have a lot of work left to do, as you can see. So there's your update. And, well, I'm going to get working. So until the next update, I'll catch you next time. Looks pretty cool, too. Way cooler than if you just bought something. When you make something, and it's completely unique, it's one of a kind, somebody opens up your hood and they see that contraption on there, they know this guy he's crazy.